We have this market that has weird stuff going on. We're talking about price and value. With the NAR settlement, it's created transparency that wasn't there before, especially for the buyer's agent. We're recording this in 2025, late 2025, early 2026. And the real estate market is weird. You have the NAR settlement, and then let's talk about Northern Utah. And I want to first introduce Matt Evans. He's a real estate agent from Northern Utah. Full disclosure, I went to high school with him, but I haven't seen him since pretty much high school. I got in Boulder. He's gotten more handsome,
lock hair, wrinkled like a lady,
foxish. It's okay. But nonetheless, we have this market that has weird stuff going on.
Yeah.
We're talking about price and value. With the NAR settlement, it's created transparency that wasn't there before, especially for the buyer's agent. So let's talk about the northern Salt Lake market, Salt Lake City in general. The average selling price of a home is about $555,000, right?
Correct. Average.
That's
West Valley and Holiday. Mix it all up together. Yep.
That's average. Yes. I don't know where the mean is, but that's average. That's why the median. But nonetheless, with that being the case, if they're going to hire you as a buying agent, they're going to have to sign a contract with you to spend about $14,000.
Correct. On the average.
We'll pay you $14,000.
Right.
So help me understand all this, because, if you're looking at that, you have Salt Lake where sellers aren't really moving on price.
Correct.
Inventory is going up. The number of days is going, the number of days on the market is about 2 months, 60 days.
Correct. We're into 60, 70 days even. Where before,
70 days. And I'm sure the higher end, you're probably even longer sometimes.
Depends on pricing, but yes, absolutely.
Pricing. Okay. Now, talk to me, Matt. How has this NAR settlement affected? What is the change that you're seeing?
So the new settlement is with the multiple listing services, they can't advertise a fixed commission, right? So now the buyer is aware that they are paying the buyer agent their commission. That's what's changed. What's happened is those that didn't have the skills to sell, that didn't have the expertise, they're dropping out of the business. People with expertise, with knowledge that can justify their value, they are becoming more valuable than ever before. That's what we've seen. I can give you a lot of examples, but that's the quick answer.
The quick answer.
Yeah.
So how do you, when you're dealing with, let's say, a home buyer, some are seasoned, some are new, but we'll just take the average home buyer. Walk me through this math.
Yeah.
We're talking value and price. So let's go back to that example. We have $550K. They have to sign a document saying they're going to have to pay you 2.5%, I think is the number now. So that's $14,000.
Right.
What do you say when these customers basically can go to Zillow and get free information? Where does the value portion of your expertise come in?
I'm really glad you brought it up that way because, clearly information now, when I started the industry back in 93, information, it was a silo. They kept all the information under lock and key. And I was the guardian of information. That was the agent's value back then. That is not the case anymore. And it will become increasingly less so in terms of just raw data. But that makes us comparable to other industries now, right? Stock industry, stock market. If you're an agent, a talent agent in sports or entertainment, right? You have the raw data. It's now, what can you do with the data? How can I use that data to my client's advantage? Average home sales, please.
Yeah. No, give me some examples of the data that might not be caught in Zillow.
Yeah, well, first thing is, how many homes does Zillow go through? Of the homes where they're giving values, they don't go through any of the homes. They don't have boots on the ground knowledge of the home inside it. So let's just take Sugar House. I think that's a great example. Zillow agent versus an agent, say like me with experience. Zillow agent's going to run you through, show you that in Sugar House location, it is the highest price per square foot for what I would call an average residential neighborhood. Okay. There's nothing special. It is extremely high price per square foot. I go to buy a home there in Sugar House. In Sugar House, certain streets are more valuable than others. It depends on, you've got your Harvard Yale streets, even Harvard Yale that has some of the highest price per square foot in Sugar House, only from about 1300 east doesn't make a difference. Zillow doesn't know that. The other thing that you don't really get from Zillow is when you go through the home, there are a lot of hidden costs, especially in a sugar house area. These homes were built in World War II era, that sort of thing. If the electrical hasn't been changed, you brought that up earlier, that's right there, probably a $10,000 expense right away. Same with sewer. Did you get the sewer camera? What kind of sewer is it? What are they doing to maintain the sewer? Water line as well. Those basic systems, if people don't know how to ask for it or how to verify it, you could run up a bill of $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 without knowing it, even if it's been a remodeled home that looks perfect. We see that a lot.
Well, it looks perfect on the outside and on the inside, but it's the guts.
Correct.
Not going to see, because if I remember the data, the average home before you have to do major infrastructure, electrical, plumbing, lasts about 75 years, which we're coming up to in that Sugar House area, which is a suburb of Salt Lake, about 75 years.
Yes.
Of that. And so, that's critical knowledge. So with that being the case, if somebody's saying, okay, now I got to give you $14,000, how do you help them? I mean, home buying now is one of the riskiest decisions.
It is.
Even on new home builds, I bought a new home and there's stuff I wish I would have known now that I don't know.
Yeah.
Then how do you justify that? Because if what I'm hearing is that without knowing it, you can make a $50,000, $60,000 mistake.
Easily.
So how do you help show that value when a customer comes in and, now it's not like, hey, I'm a looky-loo, let's just go through, blah, blah, blah. No, they have to sign a contract before you show them something.
Yeah, that's correct. They have to sign a contract. So what we do is, we certainly let them know our expertise. We've sold thousands of homes, my brother and I have. And so we've got just raw experience going through homes. We can walk through a home very quickly and tell you, okay, here's the value. Here's the potential value. Here's a room that you could potentially turn into 2 rooms. And now you've increased your value by $5,000 or $10,000. We can, you brought up earlier, Airbnb. We can let you know which areas. We've already done the research to know what areas allow for Airbnb and what don't. Municipalities. And also what areas are just good Airbnb, whether they allow it or not. Is it a good value in that area to have an Airbnb? Same with rentals. A lot of it too, and maybe you've noticed this, you grow up in whatever neighborhood you grow up in. Neighborhoods have quirks, and there are some areas that are the better part of the neighborhood for whatever reason. And it could be a lot of different things from, the water runoff comes off the hillside and that home there always gets flooded. Everybody knows that, right?
No one tells you when you're buying.
Right, exactly. So it's that kind of information that we've just accumulated over all these years that we just pass freely on to our buyers.
So do you have a story of someone who didn't go with you, and what was their experience from that?
Yeah. So this happens a lot now, and this has happened since the NAR settlement. And I'm glad you brought it up. This is a good change. So do you know Pepperwood? It's in Sandy. It's a gated neighborhood in Sandy. So in Pepperwood, we had a home there. We represented the seller. The buyer came in and said they wanted to represent themselves. And the guy's like, you know what? I've got my own attorney. I don't need you. And we did everything but beg. We almost were willing to pay them money to let us be involved in the transaction because, this is what happened. And this is an educated man. I mean, he owns businesses. He has an attorney, personal attorney. His attorney wasn't a specialist in real estate. So although he knew the law, he wasn't, he didn't know the contracts that we work with.
Did he sleep at a Holiday Inn Express?
I have no idea.
Remember those commercials? Sorry, who are you? Well, I don't work here. I just slept in a Holiday Inn Express.
Well, that may have been the case because he added no value. He added no value whatsoever. What we saw, these people we calculated they probably cost themselves $40,000 in terms of things they didn't know to ask for. And it's not like our sellers hide things, but we knew the implications of what this buyer wanted to do to the home because they told us.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember the exact thing, but it was they had wanted to either tear down a garage and add a larger garage, or we just knew that there were some soils issues that they would want to check. We didn't know the condition because we hadn't checked it, but we had heard things in the neighborhood and we gently suggested you might want to do this, but they didn't. And then that was just one instance where they didn't know what they didn't know. And that's where we saw them leave a lot of money on the table that we couldn't ethically bring up because we represented the seller, and that would have come out of our seller's pocket. But a good agent would have learned it.
Not being unethical there.
Not at all.
This is something, it's the due diligence that the buyer that a good agent for the buyer would have done.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Okay. And so that's what cost him $40,000. So you save 15, you pay 40.
Yeah.
25 in the hole.
And then we see that a lot. And this doesn't even come close to just the sheer emotional cost of it. It was a draining transaction on all involved. And so many times we're like, we could have made this so much easier because we know what we're doing. And
I look at like the old, there's Supreme Court justice says, the lawyer, the person who has himself as a client has a fool for a lawyer.
Yep.
I think that's what's being said here. You know, the person that tries to do, you know, you're not dealing with, hey, I'm an Apple.
Yeah, me too.
I love my Mac, but guess what? That's a $2,000 thing. I know pretty much the what goes in, what goes out. I mean, I worked in tech. I know it better than the average bear.
Perfect.
When it comes to a home, neighborhoods, sewers, schools, everything that goes into it, you have so many different dimensions.
You do.
I mean, Zillow, if Zillow had a dashboard, the other thing I look at Zillow is a great resource. I think it's a great start.
I do too.
If you don't know what you're looking for, you have the age-old problem that you have dashboard fatigue. You're like,
I had to know that. That's a lot. Yeah.
That's something that's not going to happen. You know, let's talk about value. Let's talk about the seller side.
Yeah.
How do you coach a seller on value, especially like, hey, if the home has been sitting for 60 days, they need to move, you know, they got a reload plan, but that's still a headache because of that. How do you help the seller, you know, because that's already involved. They've already signed with you. You know, the fee's going to be there. So how do you help the seller?
So you're asking, how do I help them position themselves in the market?
Especially when it's, you know, the price has been there for 60 days. How are you going to help that seller? Because ultimately they want to get rid of the asset.
Exactly.
And how do you help them, you know, because price isn't everything. You know, I know people say price is, you know, everything. I used to tell one of my VPs, you know, if price was everything, this was back in the 80s. I used to tell my VPs, if price was everything, if price was the only thing that mattered, we'd all be driving Yugos. And I know you drive a BMW 7 Series.
Yeah.
It's not just about price, but it's at what point, you know, it's not like the old days where the interest rates were really low, because now you have interest rates, I think, are at 6.5%.
Yeah. Flow between 6.2, 6.5. Yep.
So, you know, no longer are we in that 2% range.
Nope.
You know, that's a bigger expense. What people don't realize is my grandma was telling me she had interest rates at 10% at one time.
Yeah,
much
exactly.
different economics. I get it. But so you have 6.5% there. You have a $550, you know, let's say we'll go the average price, $555,000 home.
Yeah.
You might have some concessions in there. Let's say 10, 15,000 that they might want concessions that come up naturally. So in this scenario, when it's been on the market 60 days, what are the things that need to be done to help that to move?
Yeah. I mean, then you're talking, it's probably a price problem, but it's also a remarketing problem. Okay. Because price comes out immediately. People see the price and then they forget about it. Oh, that's overpriced. And then they move on. So you have both problems. So when we talk to a seller there, we're very good to say, okay, here's what's sold. Here's what's available. You want to see, you know, what are we competing against and where's reality? Well, what's actually selling? We have a tool where they're able to see how they compare to each sale. So if your home had sold, they would have sold at this price. If your home was just like this home, or if your home was like this one that just sold, this is the price we need them to be at. So we're always coaching them on price as far as that goes. The remarketing, this is something my team and I do. It's worth the effort. We certainly use online tools, pay-per-click and Facebook Market and all that, but we'll actually call the neighborhood. So we get phone numbers and we're calling the neighborhood, we're door knocking. And I find that neighbors are, you know, you wind up finding the neighborhood gossip. And that person gets the information and they spread it out in the neighborhood. So we're talking to the neighbors saying, hey, we were priced at, in this case, $800,000. We just dropped it to 740. Wow, you're giving it away. I know, that's what it felt like, but we weren't getting traction here. Here's where we are now. Help us find a new neighbor. That's the essence of what you need to do, is reprice it and remarket it. Both.
Yeah, sometimes the old ways work best.
They do.
It's just not everything. So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing, and a lot what we talked about, you're an asset manager.
Yes.
You're going to help them through one of the riskiest purchases they're going to make. You're not just a salesperson.
Correct.
You're an asset manager. So kind of walk me through, you talked about remarketing, the total cost of ownership of a home,
Mm-hmm.
with everything going on. How do you, why does this door opener not exist anymore, really? I mean, because if you look at the number of houses on the market, all your lazy, maybe we shouldn't call them lazy, Matt, but your lazy realtors that were doing this as a side hustle, a lot of those have gone away.
They have, absolutely.
And so how do you position yourself, in business school, they call it positioning, but
Yeah.
how do you give yourself an edge in the marketplace as more of an asset manager than just, hey, I'm here to, sign this dotted line, give me 3% of the transaction.
Yeah, exactly. And I know at some point we're going to get into the industry. This is an industry-wide problem. It's a problem the industry created through their laziness and greed. And we are suffering the consequences for it now. How do I differentiate myself? Well, we are expert salespeople. The industry doesn't even characterize itself as a sales industry. Mm-hmm. Like the NAR, right? They weren't calling themselves a sales industry until maybe a year or two ago, like just the last few years. It's ridiculous. And tell me when you want to get into it, because I do have a rant.
Let's go for it. Let's
okay.
unleash the hounds.
So this is how it happened. The brokerage model, as we know, it's been around for probably 50, 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
What brokers figured out very quickly is their most profitable agents were their least experienced agents. So, as a broker, like someone like me, with 32 years experience, I can get just a flat fee. I could get a very high split, or, I pay in a certain amount and then I don't pay anything more. I'm not a profitable agent to the broker in the traditional model. But a brand new agent, you're going to get 50% of their commission, 60% of their commission, and they'll basically rely on their friends and family. They'll sell them 2 or 3 homes a year, and that's it. So you look at a brokerage now, before the NAR settlement, and it would take probably 110 to 115 agents to make that brokerage profitable. Mm-hmm. The average agent in that brokerage was selling 1 or 2 homes a year, so not at all knowledgeable. And this has been going on industry-wide for decades now. So what you have is, I forget which the watchdog group was, but they had said, they called us an industry of amateurs. And what they said is your average agent, so 50% of the agents sell no homes a year. 75% of all agents sell between 2 to 3 homes a year. Yeah. So your odds as a seller is you have more experience than the agent you've hired. Now, that was why the MLS had a set commission, is now it was said that if I literally just bring a body through the home and write the contract, now I get paid, my brokerage gets its 50% of my fee. I didn't have to add any value because it was a contractual obligation to pay that fee. That is why we have the problem we have. You have low skill agents or, lazy agents, they try hard, they work hard. They just haven't been skilled to add value to the customer. And the industry created that. So I'm thrilled that now the NAR settlement happened. It's breaking that hold. So now MLSs don't have really, in my view, value. MLS existed only to guarantee commission payment. Now it's not guaranteed. The agent has to negotiate it.
For some of our viewers that aren't in the U.S., explain what MLS is, please.
Multiple listing service. So what it's essentially is like, think about it, a Costco for commissions. Every agent joins this club. We all advertise our houses there. And if as long as you bring me the buyer and you write the contract for it and we accept it, I pay you that 3%. Doesn't matter if you're on life support and barely conscious the whole time, I have to pay your brokerage 3%. So the brokerage community has essentially stripped value out of the community and provided for customers nothing of value. That
so what you're saying is for the brokerage, it was more built for the brokerage. Hey, get the volume of real estate agents. They have to go get license. They gotta meet that hurdle. But then after their license, you only had so much training. And then that's where you had the big brokerage firms, the Remaxes, the Better Homes and Gardens. I mean, plenty. I know I'm saying they're bad. No, I know plenty of Remax agents that do a wonderful job, but it was the model that they came in on.
That is correct. So the industry model hasn't added value to consumer. It hasn't been a consumer-facing industry. This NAR settlement, and you'll notice that they keep kind of renegotiating. NAR does.
Yeah.
My own belief is at some point it goes away. It should die a death. It's a vampire, and it should have a stake driven through its heart. And I'll be very happy to see it go away personally. Like I'm not like quiet about my views. I really dislike the NAR. My entire career, I've had to hire outside sales professionals to teach me how to do my job. I haven't gotten it from my own industry. Yeah. Now, it's pathetic, but I mean, I get good continuing education from the industry. So I don't want to slam it all. It does do certain aspects right, but we as an industry have done a very poor job of servicing the customer. That is changing now. That's what's changed.
It's kind of like, the best way I can equate it is when I went to MBA school, did great. I fell in love with marketing. Most marketing they teach you in MBA school is business to consumer goods. It's not business to business. And I've spent my whole career in business to business.
Oh, wow.
It's just different things that you do. And you have different buyers. Some are transactional, what you're saying. Some are relational buyers. Some will have the data, some don't have the data. But, let's come back to this. So, this asset, you've reframed it as asset management, which I think is great. Now let's talk about what are probably three metrics, three numbers that when a customer is looking at, a potential home buyer's looking, what are three things they should look for that they're not, that a Zillow won't show you, or you might not be pointed out, that can really impact that sale?
Well, I know one of the things we do, because you're always competing against other buyers or you're competing against the market, is find out the seller's motivation. It's an easier thing to find out, or I should say it's not as easy to find out as you might think. But having a good read on their motivation, that's key. Because once you know their motivation, then, for lack of a better word, you know what you can ask for.
Yeah.
Our little saying in our office is you can only get what you have leverage for. So part of my job is to create leverage. So motivation, I think that's number one. Number two is I would say condition of the home, and not just what an inspector can tell you, but some of the quality points that sometimes even sellers don't know the upgrades to their own homes.
Yeah.
Know where your value is. And as a buyer, if you know that maybe a seller doesn't notice this or that value, that's money in your pocket. So part of my job is to find hidden value. Be it in, I know that there's this zoning overlay that can allow you an ADU where your neighbors don't have it, or I'm just coming up with things off the top of my head. So that's probably number one and number two. So motivation, condition of the property, and I mean, pricing, comparable sales matter, but not just as raw data, but like having been through the property, so you can say, sure, your home's the same size, but their living room was bigger. They had this or this aspect that made everyone
redone. It's, pricing, you have this one number, but it's multifaceted.
Yes.
And I think when you're saying about relationship, what's the buyer's motivation? Because, if I'm motivated to buy in Salt Lake, it would be, one of the things my wife and I would want is we both like cooking, but what does that mean? That means 2 fridges.
Yes.
I heard someone tell me one of the best things we have two washer dryers. That was mainly because I made a mistake thinking a washing machine died, and then I had to go get a plumber put in. But we have 2 washer dryer hookups now, and I didn't know how beautiful that was. So it told me about having 2 dishwashers in a home, and I'm like, one was for glass, one was for dishes, and it's just so much better. I'm just like, oh, I didn't know, like I said, if I would have known that, I would have been like, no, I don't need that wall. I just need 2 fridges here. So I think that's really, it gets back to, Janet Erickson, a great professor. She once said that, humans are designed for our relational beings. They're not just numbers on a piece of paper. You want that relation. So you can have all the numbers there, but then you have dashboard fatigue. And what you're saying is there are a lot more that goes into it. So you're going to try to help the buyer get the best value and the seller to be priced right, because you can't be priced too high, you never sell. You can't be priced too low that they lose money. And then they have a bad taste in their mouth when they're like, why did this Joe Schmo's house get that? They had blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It goes away. So
the third thing I think about, and, every now and then, I mean, I've probably sold close to 2,000 homes in my career, right? Okay. And I can think of maybe just a handful of truly bad actors where the people were like blatantly dishonest or blatantly crooked. Most people are really doing the best and they're well-meaning. That's what I've seen. The third thing that no one really thinks about is the relationship, like you brought up, between the buyer and seller. When I sold my home, my personal home, 1.5 years ago, I'm still talking to that buyer. So little things matter to me. Like I paid a little extra when I moved out to have the place cleaned and to paint over little dings and that. I went out of my way to like throw in a little bit of extra for the buyer. He was very grateful for that. I introduced him to some neighbors so that it was a smooth transition. We still have a relationship. That means a lot to me. And so many buyers and sellers get so caught up in the little like, well, I need $300 for this and I need $500 for that. They don't pull back to think through like, we're going to close and we're going to shake hands. And now this person gets to represent me to my old neighborhood. And they're going to be telling my neighborhood what kind of person I am. And that's where I think that matters.
That's where I think having 2 people that are neutral.
Yeah.
I mean, technically they're on the side of each selling party, but they can do all that negotiation.
Correct.
And they can tell you what's going to work, what's not going to work. And because one of the things they teach you in business schools, they talk about a BATNA, which is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. When do you walk away?
Okay.
You say, hey, we've had it. I remember my sister went through a horror story where she was selling her home and the person was a contractor. It got to the point where she's like, listen, no more nickel and diming. This is it. I'm going back up to this price. You can buy it or leave it. He could have had more concessions.
Yeah.
He could have. But it was this, it was that, it was, you get to a point where, you're still dealing with a human.
Yeah.
And people forget that. It's not just, you're not just doing on the stock market where you're putting in a stock trade and goes up or down, or, you're putting in a short, like, oh, I hope they screw up so I make money. It's a whole different thing. And I think what I'm hearing is, you're winning because you ran towards the complexity. You're using chaos as a ladder to get those things. And I think that's really telling, is that when you get into relational selling, which a lot of us do, and what I've told people, even, when I've been selling, when you're in sales, usually it's a game of liar's poker. Like you said, even sometimes the people selling don't tell you what the real reason is why they're selling.
Rarely.
Or the buyer is not telling you the real reason because they think they're going to get one up.
Right.
This is where transparency really helps.
Correct.
And I think, with the way it's going, you should be there is a level of trust because, like you said, there's probably very few agents that are bad actors. There always are, just like in any industry. But for the most part, I don't think some homeowners are being nefarious. It's just they might not know.
Correct.
And then it becomes down to the negotiation.
Or very self-interested, right? And self-interest, when you're on the other side of that, it can feel awful, right? But we work very hard, never burn a bridge. You can't burn bridges. You never know when you're going to need that person again, right? Or how that relationship might ramify into, well, they know so-and-so and they know so-and-so. We really strongly counsel our people. We see ourselves as the calming force in the transaction.
Yeah.
And we're able to do that through knowledge and expertise and experience.
That's great. It's great to catch up with you, Matt. Great to have you here. What are your predictions for the market in Utah over the next 2 years?
I have a lot of data behind it. So the Wasatch Front, right? The Wasatch Front, it's bounded by two mountain ranges. You got the Wasatch, and then you've got the Oakers, in Salt Lake County, right? Utah is a big state. I mean, it's not Texas, but it's a big state. We've got the available buildable land of Vermont. So we're actually, because a lot of the land in Utah is owned by the government. So and the Wasatch Front, your utilities like plumbing, sanitation, all that is just in this narrow band. So what we have is low, I would say low supply. Even though like numbers are rising, we have low supply. We're going to add 1 million people to the Wasatch Front by 2050. So we're adding about 30,000 people a year in Salt Lake County that you're seeing, coming in every year, or excuse me, in the state, in the Wasatch Front.
Yeah.
So
30,000 people, that's growing probably about 3% a year.
Yeah.
It compounds. Because I remember I was in Vegas during the 1990s where we were getting 5,000 new people moving in every month for a while. It was crazy how fast things were going up.
Yeah.
Which caused things to skyrocket and over a time. But then, after the recorrection, everything came back down and people actually lost.
Vegas was rough. Vegas was like ground zero for the crash, the real estate crash. In the next 2 years, so Ivory Homes is a big home builder, and they bring in economists in that. I was at their institute. They predict prices flat, maybe going up. These are, a bunch of PhDs, and that's what they're saying. That seems about right to me. You mentioned stickiness. How do we have listings going up, number of sales going down, prices staying the same or rising? It's that pressure, that growth pressure that we have. Even with inventory rising, historically, we're still below where we need to be historically. So I expect prices to stay flat or go up a little.
And do you think that a lot of that has to do with the interest rates? I mean, soon, if 6% stays there, it's going to become normalized.
Yeah. And historically, it is normal. Like historically, it's a good rate. But you say the economics are different. You're right. Average price when it was 6% last wasn't $500,000. The thing that I see, that's going to happen, the interest rate will happen, but just the growth pressure. Well, once rates drop, say to 5, 4.5, we lost 30% of our buyers when rates popped up to 7%. Those buyers will come back in, and that's going to pop the market back up in Utah. Okay. There's a basic problem in housing in that right now the pipeline from, conception to certificate of occupancy is a 7-month thing, sometimes 4 to 7 months. So when the population hits, when rates drop and suddenly we have a bunch of buyers in the market, we can't produce the houses to fill the need. And so you get these spikes in value.
Yeah.
I see that effect.
It's the old supply and demand curves that we learned.
Exactly right. Texas, you can grow outward forever, right?
I mean, I live in Houston. Right now,
that's
the metro area is, I think about 5-6 million.
Okay. Wow.
It's massive. I mean,
yeah.
I-10 corridor is like the biggest freeway system in the world. It's just
wow.
Massive. I live in Cypress, which is a suburb, and our home value has stayed, I bought in 2021, so our home value was flat. It wasn't until the last couple of years that things have just spiked.
Really? Okay.
Is your property tax rates in Utah, because you have an income tax, are
right,
able to be lower than the property tax in Salt Lake. So, Matt, I just want to, thank you for your time.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.